Greetings, Internet. Fancy meeting you here. Today, on Half-Baked Libertarian, we're going to be talking about how the name of the show is Half-Baked Libertarian. Given how much I joke about libertarian ideas being half-baked, I thought a fun gimmick for this show would be to deliver it half-baked. That way, when I'm doing my commentary, I'm facing a similar mental handicap as your average libertarian. So, at least for today, and I'm brand new to content creation, of course, so this will all be changing quite a bit, I imagine. But I'm going to go ahead and do a dab of Sour Patch Kids live resin jam while our intro theme song plays. And then we'll start the actual show. Cheers, y'all. So, I truly considered myself a libertarian from high school up until about a year ago. But the libertarian pandemic hypocrisy was too much for me not to start asking some questions. And before long, I came to see that all of libertarianism is just poli-sci 101 level ideas designed to benefit the wealthy and powerful, dressed up with academic research conducted by people with the same ideological tilt. I value my rights above all else, including your rights. The idea of social equity is a joke to them. If you aren't rich, it's your fault. If you are, it's because you deserve to be. I came to realize this and pull back from libertarianism, but I still wanted to understand where libertarians were coming from. In the same way I'm interested in learning about religion, even though I'm basically an atheist. But I flew too close to the sun. I asked the wrong person tough questions. And I got myself blocked. And now I can't get any libertarians to respond to any of my tweets. Maybe they're afraid that they'll be engaged in a meaningful conversation. And they know that Americans don't support the dissolution of the United States. When I started asking questions that led one person to believe I'd figured it out and was going to expose their true viewpoints in as many of their tweets as possible, they blocked me to prevent me from being able to interact with them. They could have simply muted me if they were annoyed by my tweets and didn't want to see them anymore, but by blocking me, they actively prevent me from being able to interact with them. which means other people also can't see the interactions that I would post. It's a little bit ironic to me that a libertarian is directly engaging in censorship on social media when one of the things they bitch about the most is censorship on social media. But again, it's about my rights, not yours. So they went ahead and censored me from doing so. But that's just simple hypocrisy. I'm used to seeing that in politics. What's new and quite frightening to me is something that I'm calling Neo-Confederatism. And that's not a term that I came up with myself. I'm not sure where I heard it first, but I think it does apply. And I think it is self-descriptive. Neo-Confederatism being new Confederates. People who supported the Confederate States of America, that seceded from the Union and led to the Civil War. The idea of being a new version of supporting that is something that kind of freaks me out. So let's get into a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure you go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to get notifications when I post new videos. I don't post new videos very often. You won't get very many notifications. Don't worry. The notifications that you do get will be of the utmost quality. And of course, Twitter is where most of the action happens. So you can find me on Twitter at DrinkYourOJ. And, I love to have good faith, open-ended conversations about almost any topic. I'm not very good at sports stuff. It's not that I don't like it. I just don't know any of it very well. I mean, I understand how the games work. I watch football. I'm a big fan of football, but I don't know the players inside and out, so I can't really have a deep conversation about sports. But most things, I would say, most things are fair game. Certainly anything political. And if you're a libertarian, especially, I want to hear from you, because I've got a lot of questions for you. So with that in mind, let's get into the situation here where I got blocked by somebody who says they're traveling the nation full-time fighting for liberty. Being blocked doesn't seem very liberty-oriented. I want to say first off, this is not a takedown piece. It might seem that way at points, but there just happens to be a main character of this particular story. And also the one person who calls themselves libertarian, who used to show me respect and answer questions before those questions started getting too difficult. I thought libertarians were basically just socially progressive Republicans, GOP classic, not MAGA GOP. I did work on the 2016 Johnson Weld campaign with this person, and I was even a precinct captain or something like that at one point. I spent a lot of time standing up and maintaining lawn and road signs. If you saw a Gary Johnson sign in Bothell Mill Creek, odds are I had something to do with it. I either put it there or I helped stand it up at one point or something. I knew that this state was going to be blue anyway, Washington State. So I had no problem with taking some votes for the third party. I basically wanted to get them ballot access for the next time around. I knew something was amiss with my belief system, my libertarian belief system, when the COVID vaccines came out. And all of a sudden, the same libertarians that have always believed that private businesses should be able to do essentially whatever they want and let the market work it out are now saying businesses do not have the right to turn away unvaccinated patrons. Hypocrisy abounds. The other thing is that this person ran for state office, and not only did I vote for them, I donated hundreds of dollars, possibly over $1,000, to their campaign. But they don't understand why it's important for as many people as possible to be vaccinated, and it's not just about your personal freedom. It's about the freedom of everyone around you. So at this point, I really started questioning how I felt about the liberty movement in the U.S., and I came to realize that libertarians are almost by definition sociopathic. They're primarily concerned with their own well-being and the well-being of those they choose to care about, rather than that of society as a whole. This used to seem to me to just be stupidity or cruelty by apathy, but now I'm genuinely concerned it's becoming about something much more active and alarming. And I will get into what that is momentarily. But first, we're going to talk about that apathy aspect that I mentioned. In this set of tweets, we're talking about testing. And he says, if I'm sick and I don't know it, why would I be getting a test? If I'm sick and I don't know I'm sick, I wouldn't be going to the doctor because I wouldn't be feeling sick. By nature, most people that don't feel sick don't get tested. If I did feel sick, I'd stay home. Never minding the fact that, COVID can spread asymptomatically, and therefore you may be sick and not feel any symptoms, but still be spreading it to other people, which is a thing that's been known for a long-ass time now. Libertarians are all about keeping up with current science, as long as it supports their beliefs. But even outside the context of COVID, there's the whole idea of preventative medicine. Things like physicals, things like mammograms, colonoscopies. These are procedures that people do even though they feel fine, to make sure they continue feeling fine. Just because you feel one way at a given moment doesn't mean everything is okay with your body everywhere. If you have a tumor growing somewhere inside you, you won't know about it. I mean, if you don't go to the doctor until it gets so big that it is likely to cause problems. If you go to the doctor, they check for that kind of stuff. I mean, there's a reason that insurance companies, who notoriously do not want to pay for anything, at least all insurance plans I have ever had, give you a free physical every year that they very much encourage you to take. It goes on to say, do you want people that don't feel sick or show any symptoms to do what? Randomly test themselves once a week, daily, monthly? No thanks. That doesn't bring any measurable value to my life, and it's wrong to force people to be tested. I'm not afraid of COVID and will take my chance. Notice how the tone of the tweet is very much about that individual, and not about other people. The only thing that they do say about other people is that it's wrong to force them to be tested, but nobody was ever forcing anybody to be tested from the government. There were a number of private businesses that did, but again, libertarians, what's your position with the private businesses? Are they allowed to do what they want or not? If you say that they are supposed to be free to make their own decisions and let the market work it out, and they decide that the best choice is to require people to not have COVID when they come into their store, then that's a policy that you have to abide by. I'm not afraid of COVID and will take my chance. But the thing is, you can infect and kill others, even if you feel fine. Yes, I do think people should get physicals and colonoscopies and mammograms and those kinds of things to check for conditions that can be treated early and don't show symptoms until later stages, especially, if you're in a higher risk group for that particular disease. I'm not telling 20-year-olds to go out and get colonoscopies. I don't know what the age is, 55, 60, something like that. 50 maybe. But whenever, there's an age that different people will say that you should start getting colonoscopies every few years. And then maybe a little bit more often than that as you get older. But the whole idea is that if you do get colon cancer, you would catch it early on and prevent it from spreading to the rest of your body and killing you. That's why doctors do testing, even though you feel okay. And I would think that somebody who ran for state office for a position that involved medicine very heavily would know about that and take it into account. But, I'm not right about everything. So as a result, I started wondering what other aspects of libertarianism were more backwards than I originally believed. And I thought the person to answer those questions would be this same person. While this person had been someone with whom I'd discussed political issues for years, they started routinely not responding to my tweets. I'd just get a talking point as an initial answer and then nothing. They were generally good about answering the initial question, but any follow-ups would often go ignored. So I was initially told that this was because they couldn't tell when I was making facetious comments versus actually asking questions. And to be fair, I did intersperse friendly jabs with genuine questions, and it's hard to tell the difference as a recipient on the internet when you just have text-based communication. So I started following Poe's law and making it extremely clear when I was making commentary versus actually asking questions. But this didn't improve the response rate a single bit. It's almost like the initial reason given was a bullshit cop-out. In this tweet from Justin Amash, who is a former congressman from Michigan, he shares a column that the headline says, "Mocking anti-vaxxers' death is ghoulish, yes, but necessary." And this person, responded, "Thank you, this is hate speech." And, that struck me right away because libertarians will say there is no such thing as hate speech. It's just free speech. But, if it is against something they like, then it's hate speech. The reason that they say they take that approach is that they have heard a lot of bad shit said to people at different points. And now, because people are openly celebrating and wishing death on others, that they believe in hate speech. Okay. Well, that's a position. I don't recall the details of the story, But the point is, I get a response saying, you think my comment is only referring to this single asshole? I've seen thousands of hateful, bigoted comments towards people that don't inject themselves for pharma profits. It's evil and flat disgusting. So, all of a sudden, we're not talking about the article anymore or hate speech. We are talking about hate speech, but not in the context of the article. It's in the context of this person's experience with all of these people saying hateful things. And then in the same tweet, they call me and everyone else who's been vaccinated people who inject themselves for pharma profits, which is obviously not the reason that I got vaccinated. I did so because it is the best method that we have available to prevent you from dying from COVID. And it works. That's why I got it. I should have the same freedom to choose to receive the vaccine as anyone else should have to choose not to receive it. So if you're arguing that you should have the right not to receive the vaccine, it's strange to, at the same time, argue that I shouldn't have the freedom to have the vaccine. But, half-baked ideas. I of course asked the question, what about the freedom of individual choice, and get no response. So another example of this person just letting the difficult question go. This next tweet talking about a mass shooting, which there's so many of them now, and they're happening so frequently that I literally can't even keep track. So this is one that happened around July 6th of this year. I make the point that, of course, there's something mentally wrong with you if you open fire on innocent people in any situation. But the mental health narrative is BS. The problem is that all these people have guns. All the other countries have solved this by getting rid of the guns. And it turns out those countries are no less free than the US. And the Democracy Index rating, which is compiled by the Economist Intelligence Unit, which is a research division of the Economist Group, which publishes the weekly newspaper The Economist, ranks countries based on 60 indicators grouped into 5 different categories. In addition to a numeric score and a ranking, the index categorizes each country into one of 4 regime types: full democracy, flawed democracy, hybrid regime, and authoritarian regime. The US, by the way, was recently downgraded to a flawed democracy. We always had been a full democracy prior to that. I point out that these people are no less free, and I cite as evidence an index that studies freedom, and the response I get is they're less free in the area of self-defense. Cows probably think they're free as well until they get taken to the slaughterhouse. So apparently we're like cows and the US government is like a slaughterhouse. I don't know how living in a state is akin to being slaughtered, but I'll just let that one go. It says no country is remotely free on any index rating I respect, and I'm not giving up my gun, and I'll help people procure them. Now, they're not just talking about their own gun, but they're talking about helping other people get guns. But ignoring that, I just focus on what's an example of a rating that you do respect. And they say one does not exist, LOL, which is just like a flippant I don't give a shit about you response. You might as well not give me a response. So I found that response to be so ridiculous that I went ahead and forwarded this tweet. And out of respect for this person, I went ahead and blurred their identifying features because they didn't ask to be included in my new tweet. They didn't participate in it. So, they shouldn't have to be associated with it if they don't want to be. So out of respect, I blurred their identifying aspect. And so they reply, "No need to block my name. I have nothing to hide. I answer tons of your questions very directly, as you can see above. I also get millions of hits a year on my various social media pages and literally can respond to every conversation. You just don't like my point of view." So apparently I am getting responses, even though I've shown examples where I clearly was not. And the answers, even when I would get responses, could never be described, in my mind, as direct. They were always very roundabout, talking point kind of answers. But, I mean, go back on my Twitter and look for yourself. It's just absurd to say that I simply don't like your point of view. And as a result, I'm going to ask a bunch of questions about it to try to understand it better. I don't understand how that relates to somebody not liking a point of view. When it comes to things like a democracy index rating, they totally dodge the question. And then they act like it's impossible to objectively evaluate the value of governments if that specific government's policies disagree with their own. Which is like saying, I'm a Jew, therefore Christians don't exist. Because the fact that they disagree on whether or not the historical Jesus was the Messiah doesn't change the fact that there are people today who believe that he is. And even if we don't agree with them, we can still gather their thoughts on the matter, study their beliefs, and come to try to understand their point of view and why they hold that point of view, even though I myself don't necessarily believe in God. I could still very easily have a conversation with a person about God and pretend, for the sake of conversation, that God is there. You can do all sorts of things like that for different conversations as you need to. So it's not about not liking the point of view. Clearly, I enjoy engaging in discussion, and maybe I don't like the point of view, but that's not the reason that I'm sending tweets. The reason I'm sending tweets is to get more information, is ask questions, and maybe to try to highlight something that I think is a point. So I'm noticing some of the rhetoric kind of escalate, and it essentially was made clear to me why some of my questions weren't being answered. And this is where I decided that libertarians of this ilk are really Neo-Confederates. And I think Neo-Confederates is the label I'm going to use for libertarians in general from now on, since that's apparently what they're really about. And obviously this freaked me out and led to a lot more questions in the area of self-defense, questions that naturally went unanswered, as we'll see in these tweets here. Your questions read right from a Fed's playbook, bro. I'll pass from answering them. I quote this person saying, "The government is a violent aggressor that shouldn't exist. It's sad you think we, the people that are actually being oppressed, would be considered the aggressors. and feds are violent criminals that deserve jail or worse, all of which were said in the context of self-defense. So the question to which I would like a direct answer is, do you think it's morally justified to kill elected representatives in any circumstance? Now, if you're asked a question like that, how hard is it to say no? Well, if you don't believe the answer is no, then it's more difficult, I guess. So the answer I get is, you must think I'm stupid, this conversation is over. Again, totally dodging the question, literally just cutting it off. And yes, I can see how the way that's worded is something that you wouldn't want to answer yes to, but it's not a question that you morally should be answering yes to. So I didn't think there was a problem with asking it, because I didn't think the answer was going to be something that was going to be a violation of the law. I later that day got a DM saying, dude, I told you if you wanted to talk on the phone, I was willing. I'm not answering questions on social media that get me put on government watch lists, though. Well, why would you be put on a government watch list for saying that you don't believe in killing elected representatives for the sake of political gain? I don't blame this person for being paranoid. If I was openly advocating for a revolution against the federal government on a public social media platform, I'd probably be worried about being on the wrong side of the law as well. But it didn't stop there. And I think this is what finally actually got me blocked. The tweet on the right is what was sent out initially, and then the tweet on the left is my retweet of it, or quote tweet, I should say. I fear those upset about the LPNH, Libertarian Party of New Hampshire tweet, don't have the stomach for what is actually going to be needed to take back liberty stolen from us from warmongering neocons and their supportive family members. You can keep playing nice, but that won't change their ways. So I comment and say, what is actually going to be needed, quote, is something that libertarians won't talk about on Twitter for fear of being banned. What does that tell you? These are not peaceful people. And if you want to live in a lawless, Wild West, shoot 'em up, Grand Theft Auto type world, then vote Libertarian. And I said that based on the escalating rhetoric that I had been seeing, the responses I received to the questions that I asked, and the DM that I received that said, basically, I can't answer your question because it would violate the law if I did. So I'm asserting my Fifth Amendment rights. So, hey, that's fine. But this person blocked me with absolutely zero warning after, in my mind, being friendly for a decade almost. I mean, this is a person that a matter of weeks ago said that we should remain friendly above everything else. But then they couldn't be bothered to say anything to me before unexpectedly blocking me. And they have my personal cell phone number. They could have texted me. They could have called me. Frankly, I think this person is an absolute coward. I respected them until I saw that they'd essentially canceled me on their Twitter account without saying anything or attempting to salvage my relationship with them in any way. If my questions were so annoying, I could have simply been muted. But blocking me is definitely, a case of being canceled from your personal Twitter. So I think they're nervous that someone's going to figure out, like I did, what libertarians are really about and what national divorce really means. which is a new confederacy, dissolution of the United States federal government, which would likely be by violent means. So much for libertarians being pro-peace, except in cases of self-defense. Libertarians don't want people to know this is really their end game. I believe they want to dismantle the government and hold a new constitutional convention to write a corporate-friendly constitution that favors minority rule. I mean, it would have to, because libertarians are a significant minority of the voting population. So if they want to have power, they have to have minority rule. And that's not democracy. Even after I got blocked, this person is still sending tweets where the rhetoric seems to even be escalating. New York Governor Kathy Hochul sends a message saying that we should categorize firearm purchases. The credit card companies should categorize them and then flag suspicious activity, which is the same thing they do for other transactions. I think that makes perfect sense. I don't see why firearms wouldn't be categorized on their own, and you absolutely should flag suspicious activity for anything. So I don't see the problem with that. But the response from this person is, print guns, close your bank cards, fuck around and find out, Kathy. Which to me sounds a little bit menacing, but I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it. And then they start talking about the, national divorce, #national divorce. They say if both spouses are abusive, they have even more reason to split apart. National divorce is best for the kids. I've never been married, so I've never been divorced, but I don't know of anyone, I've never heard of anyone who went through divorce and said that it was like an okay process. Like it's always a terrible, terrible nightmare that usually costs them a ton of money and time and stress. And on top of that, your ex is never really out of your life. They're still always your ex. So, depending on where you live relative to each other, you may well still be seeing each other frequently. So it's not exactly like you can just lift this person out of your life that easily. On the right, some people want to walk away, others don't want to let them and will use violence to try to stop it. This only serves to prove why walking away is needed. Never stay with a group of people who use violence to enslave you. You should always walk away. So apparently the U.S. government is enslaving people, according to this person, which is kind of ironic because it's a comment in response to a tweet about how most people didn't grow up next to a Civil War battlefield, and it shows. I understand the perspective of freedom of association, but we tried that once. Hundreds of thousands of men died. So some of y'all didn't grow up next to a Civil War battlefield, and it shows. So this is what I'm talking about. The map on the left is the 2020 election, broken down by county. The map on the right is the trend from 2004 through 2020, which shows that the country is shifting towards the Democrats. But we've now had Republican presidents winning the presidency without the popular vote multiple times and having a major influence on the Supreme Court. And that ideology does not fit with what the American people want or what they are, where their trends are headed. So this is a problem with our political system. But that's a topic for another show, I think. The idea is that the red and blue are so interspersed, there is no way to do a national divorce peacefully, because you have to have a massive group of people move from one area to another, no matter how you do it. And there are going to be people that don't want to move, and they shouldn't have to, because why should you have to? And the whole idea is the antithesis of what I believed libertarianism to be. It starts a war, basically. Given that no one alive today experienced the Civil War, I think libertarians are banking on the fact that people love their guns more than their lives, even though literally no one is doing anything to take their guns away. They feel the need to end the current government before those guns are taken away. And it sounds like it's possible those plans may include violent acts. I'm not accusing anyone of plotting against the government, but I am certainly concerned about it. Neo-Confederates / Libertarians know that the idea of a second civil war is generally unpopular, so they invented #national divorce to disguise what they really mean. And, looking at this country by country or county by county map of red versus blue districts, shows you that there's really no way a national divorce can take place peacefully. So it's an idea that is totally half-baked. So it sounds like I may need to do a video on the Second Amendment and self-defense to tie in with this one. But of course, I never had the opportunity to have a real discussion about libertarians' ideas about self-defense, because literally no one would respond to my open calls for good faith conversation. Not even debate, just me asking questions and trying to understand things. If you're the libertarian who can make this make sense to me, please reach out. I'd love to have my mind changed because I've come to learn some new information. I'm always open to having my mind changed when I'm having a conversation with somebody. You have to be, or else you're not really listening. You're just waiting for your turn to talk and arguing your point. So, on that note, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you want more of this kind of content. And go ahead and hit the notification bell while you're at it, because I don't upload that many videos. And so you'll want to know when I do upload one, because it'll be very special. Very special. And again, if you want to reach me on Twitter, I am at DrinkYourOJ. And yeah, I don't just tweet about politics, but I tweet a lot about politics and shit like that. So, thanks for watching, everyone. And until next time, stay half-baked.